You notice someone across the fire. Your heart moves before your mind does. You do not have a phone to check. You do not have an app to swipe. You do not have a friend group chat to screenshot and analyze. There is just the firelight, the silence of the savannah, and the oldest feeling your body has ever known. For roughly 300,000 years, this was how it started. No matchmakers, no dowries, no dinner reservations. And yet somehow your ancestors found each other. They fell in love. They built families. And without any of the infrastructure modern humans take for granted, they managed to keep the human lineage alive long enough for you to be sitting here right now. So how exactly did they do it? The first thing to understand is that ancient humans did not date the way you do. They did not even think about romantic partnership the way you do. For most of human prehistory, people lived in small mobile bands of roughly 50 individuals. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who spent decades studying human social groups, found that this band size was not random. It was the natural limit of how many people a human brain could track intimately. Everyone in your band knew everyone else. You had grown up together. You had hunted together. You had grieved together, which meant that within your own group, your options were immediately and obviously limited. This is the first major difference. You did not choose a partner from a sea of strangers. You chose from people you had known your entire life, or you found someone from outside your band entirely, and that second option was far more common than most people assume. Archaeological evidence from sites like Sunjir in Russia, dated to around 34,000 years ago, shows burial goods and personal ornaments that suggest long-distance trade and social contact between groups, separated by hundreds of miles. Researcher Marta Mirezen-Lar, who studies ancient human population genetics, found that early humans regularly exchanged not just tools and materials, but people. Partner exchange between bands was not just romantic, it was strategic. It kept bloodlines diverse. It built alliances. It prevented inbreeding in groups small enough for that to be a genuine survival threat. So, in a very real sense, finding a partner in the ancient world was also finding a bridge between two groups of people. But let's step back even further. What did attraction actually look like before language was sophisticated enough to carry a conversation? Evolutionary anthropologist Helen Fisher, who has spent over 30 years studying human pair, bonding, and attraction at Rutgers University, argues that the brain systems driving love and attraction are ancient, deeply ancient. Fisher's neuroimaging research found that the dopamine reward circuits activated by romantic attraction are the same circuits activated by hunger, thirst, and survival drive. Attraction was not a luxury emotion layered on top of survival. It was woven directly into the machinery of staying alive. What this means is that your ancestors were not choosing partners based on a checklist. They were reading signals that evolution had spent millions of years calibrating. Symmetrical features, because they indicate healthy development. Physical strength, because it meant survival. Social reputation, because it meant the group trusted this person. Generosity, because a generous person would feed you and your children even in a bad season. These were not shallow signals. They were survival data encoded into physical attraction. But here is where it gets more interesting than you might expect. Among the Kungsan people of southern Africa, one of the most extensively studied hunter-gatherer populations on Earth, anthropologist Richard Lee spent years in the field in the 1960s, documenting how partner selection actually worked. What he found was that young women had a striking degree of agency in choosing their mates. Women were not traded or assigned. They were courted. Men brought gifts. Men demonstrated skill. Men competed for reputation through generosity and storytelling. And women watched. They evaluated. They talked among themselves. They chose. This pattern appears again and again across hunter-gatherer societies. Researcher Kim Hill, who studied the ape people of Paraguay over decades, found similar structures. Monogamy existed, but it was rarely lifelong by default. Partnerships formed, dissolved, and reformed across a lifetime. Serial pair bonding, Hill found, was far more common than rigid lifetime commitment. Humans appear to have evolved for deep romantic attachment, but not necessarily for a single partner across 60 or 70 years. This makes sense when you consider the actual life expectancy of a prehistoric human. You were not planning for retirement. A successful partnership meant surviving the next season together, raising children past their most vulnerable years, building enough social capital that your group would help you when you were injured or ill. The emotional intensity of early pair bonding served a biological purpose. It bound to people together long enough to get through the hardest years of raising young children. Let's reconstruct a scene. You are somewhere between 15 and 20 years old. It is roughly 100,000 years ago. Somewhere in what is now East Africa, your band has traveled north to meet another group at a seasonal gathering site near a river that neither group owns, but both groups have used for generations. Dozens of people have come together. There are fires. There is shared food. There is dancing, which researcher Polly Wiesner, who studied campfire conversations among the Kung San, identified as one of the primary social bonding mechanisms of ancient human groups. Music and rhythm and movement evolved precisely because they synchronize bodies and emotions across group lines. And in this gathering, you see someone from the other band. You do not share a language perfectly, but you share rhythm. You share proximity. You share the same fire. The courtship that follows is not quick. Hunter-gatherer courtship across most studied groups. Takismonts. It involves repeated proximity, shared labor, demonstrated skill. A young man might track and kill a large animal and bring the meat back not just to impress, but to feed the group, because feeding the group was the loudest signal of worth he could send. A young woman might demonstrate her knowledge of plant medicine, her skill at fire making, her ability to read weather patterns and landscape. Competence was attractive because incompetence got people killed. And through all of this, elders watched, not to control, but to advise. In most hunter-gatherer fuentes who wrote extensively on human pair bonding in the creative spark, elder members of the group held significant informal influence over partnerships, not because they had formal authority, but because they held the deepest memory. They knew which family lines had a history of violence. They knew which people had proven themselves when things got hard. Their counsel was taken seriously because their pattern recognition had been built over a lifetime of survival. Here is the counterintuitive twist. Modern humans are surrounded by more potential partners than any human in history has ever had access to. You can see thousands of faces on an app in an afternoon. You can exchange messages with someone on the other side of the planet. You have more choice than any ancestral human ever dreamed of. And yet, loneliness among modern adults is at historically documented peaks. Studies from the American Psychological Association, published in the 2020s, show that roughly half of adults in developed nations report meaningful feelings of loneliness on a regular basis. More choice has not translated into more connection. Your ancestors had fewer options. They had almost no privacy. They had no ability to curate a version of themselves before they were seen. But they were seen, fully seen, every day, in labor and in rest, in sickness and in strength, around a fire that had no off switch. That depth of being known is something the human nervous system was built for. Not swiping, not optimization, not endless optionality. Just someone across the fire. Your heart moving before your mind does. The oldest feeling your body has ever known. and 300,000 years later. That feeling has not changed at all.